Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rule the Roost. Getting to the fourth round of the FA Cup's not for everybody. It's not for everybody, but it is for Tottenham Hotspur. We've managed to navigate what shouldn't have been a tricky tie, but ended up being a tricky tie. And here to dissect that is Mr. Jon Bass. Welcome back. How are you doing, fella?
Good, mate. How are you? How late into January can you do a Happy New Year? Because I feel like you get the first week, don't you? And that's it.
I think
I'll say it.
I think there's a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode all about this. There's usually a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode for everything. And I'm one of those people, I don't know where you stand on it. I enjoy Curb Your Enthusiasm. I can dip in and out of it here and there. But some people are like religious Curb Your Enthusiasm fans. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think for them it's like how The Office is for me. So I won't go in too hard. I understand it. It's like, we're different. Like, there's people who are really into Catholicism, and then there's, people who are very loyal to the Islamic faith. You both believe in, a God. They're different, but I can understand, the level of faith required in order to, pray to your respective God. But Ricky Gervais is the one true and only God. We all know that.
There's even crossover, but you both loath to realise that. Here we are preaching a message of universal peace and goodwill to all men through the medium of popular television series. But let's do Tamworth, mate. Let's dive into Tamworth, because if we are talking about a Happy New Year, that wasn't the good being Liverpool in the week, the bad being Tamworth on the weekend. Like I say, history will show Tottenham came through both of those cup competitions. Well, we don't know actually about the Liverpool one, but still, we've come through the FA Cup game, but it doesn't tell the full story, does it? I was pretty cool about it. By full time, I knew if we got them to extra time, we'd win. I just knew we would. And I sort of said in the post-match thing that it wasn't really a win. It was just us being fitter than they are. It was just us having Premier League players. They came a whisker away in like the 95th, 96th minute, wasn't it? Pinballing around the box. And at that point, I was, honestly, I'll tell you, I sat there, arms folded, looking at the TV, just saying, how can they do this to us? How can they, where's the pride? How can they do this to us? Like, how can we have these type of performances? Like these embarrassing fixtures, managers in prison, going away to Tamworth, these sort of things that, like, how can you stick to this script that Paddy Power want you to stick to constantly? But we didn't. We managed to pull it off, and it's fine. And now I'm like, it's fine. We're through. We're through in the FA Cup. AstroTurf pitch. It was tough and everything, but I'm not gonna lie. I was fuming in the moment. How did you feel about it, mate?
Well, we were talking about God and religion and faith, and I kind of feel like simulation theory gets sort of roundly mocked by people in the sort of modern world, but it's becoming more and more popular. And if you're a Spurs fan, I think you're more likely to believe that it's real, given the amount of ridiculous coincidences, stuff that essentially feels like storylines written to go, what is the funniest outcome here? What is the most ridiculous set of events that could transpire to make this particular fan base suffer the most?
We do it as a meme, don't we? But it is that Anton Beck sat behind the console thing, isn't it? Like, now give Tamworth a 95th minute winner, isn't it? Like, it's...
Yeah, it's like the Truman Show, but instead of going, oh, this would be a really interesting way if we just managed his life in a really safe way, it's like Charles Bronson gets out of prison and goes, right, you're in charge now of Spurs fans, and he just goes, oh, this would be hilarious. What else can we do? I'll let the manager who's in prison win this tie. That'd be funny. Let's change the handball rule in a Champions League fight. That'd be funny. Like, all this kind of mad stuff. So in some ways, so in two ways. One, I feel like it's a great lesson for life, which is why I think a lot of Spurs fans are really well adjusted, because you're just used to like the most berserk things happening to you, so you can deal with life. And two, in football terms, nothing really surprises me. Like, nothing really shocks me. Like, when this game kicked off, and I was just thinking, okay, we're for all intents and purposes, a top 7 Premier League side, right? We've got internationals all over the pitch, and particularly when I saw the team, I was like, it's a really strong team. They're essentially non-league. we should win this 4 or 5-0 on paper. That's how it should be. But I was also very confident that what I was about to see would also be a 0-0. They could potentially win it in the 90th minute. Horror show with the whole world prepared to like pile in on us and kick us while we were down. So I had this whole sense of calm the entire time in a weird way. And maybe that's kind of like a sign of how much damage has been done to me emotionally, that I kind of was very comfortable with what I was seeing, in the sense of it was an awful performance and I was fuming about the football, but the situation didn't feel like completely unique, or I personally didn't feel kind of powerless, because I just kind of felt like this is just what we do. This is just what happens. And so, yeah, it was super frustrating watching us really, like, genuinely struggle to break down a side. What are they, 6 leagues below us or something?
Semi-professional, you know.
Yeah. Well, actually, one of my friends, he used to play for Biggleswade Town with one of the guys who was playing in that game yesterday. So, like, it's closer to home. Like, and I've played football with my friend Nick, who played with this guy for my whole life. So the standard isn't a million miles away from people I know who I've played with. And I felt more than a million miles away from ever being close to even being semi-professional. So that should tell you, like, everything you need to know, right? Like, it's kind of crazy.
It is mad, mate. Like, I've paid the past couple of years feeling a bit kind of disenfranchised with, you know, I know it's trite and everything, but with top level football and everything like that. I have paid a bit more attention to the National League since they've started like showing it on like TV. Do you know what I mean? You can watch a lot of it already on there now, on like BT Sport and stuff like that, or whatever it is, TNT now. You can watch a bit on there every now and again. And I always think, oh, I'll watch some. And I've actually gone to a few matches here and there. The standard is it's vastly below the Premier League. Like, it's vastly below it. And I know that, like, I get the point, because I saw some people sort of, you know, talking about it on both Twitter and Blue Sky, saying you just don't get it. Like, playing on, for these players, playing on like this tiny pitch, playing on like 4G, 3G, or AstroTurf, whatever you want to call it, 'cause people didn't seem to be decided on that either. It's going to be tough, even for a Premier League footballer. It's going to be tough, and like, it felt like, you know, there were all this kind of like straw clutching, all this kind of like copium type mechanisms being applied to it. And I was sort of like, yeah, nodding along, like, okay, this sort of makes sense. When when you try to find the actual, like, my eye test is telling me one thing, but let's just try and like dive into this a bit. But even when I started to sort of accept those thoughts that, like, yeah, there is a rationality to this, I still hit this roadblock of like, bollocks, like bollocks, man. Like,
Yeah.
these lads have like proper dialed in personal trainers, nutritionists, coaches, the sort of facilities that are available to players at Tottenham Hotspur, and have been for, I know Ange said before the game, when he was asked how are these footballers going to, you know, react to playing in circumstances like this, he was like, they all come from this. They don't really, though. Like, players who play at Tottenham's level probably haven't ever really played. Loads of them are young anyway. Half our team are like 17, 18 years old, if not between about 17 and 22. They've all been in elite level football for the majority of their lives, their careers.
Yeah.
The fact that, like, they just, I don't know. I don't think there were any excuses for quite how bad they were yesterday, really. Quite how much they let the occasion get the better of them. The only thing I can really think is that they just thought they were going to turn up and win. That they didn't give the opposition any sort of respect whatsoever. And I saw a few, and I know I've not sort of minced my words on Ange the past few weeks, and I've kind of, you know, probably drifted towards the side of not really having his back anymore. I didn't really feel. I saw some people saying, how could he start this front three? How could he start this front? Johnson, Werner, and what's his name, Mikey Moore, who's been out for so long. And I was thinking, like, he's well within his rights to think that Timo Werner could turn up against the National League team when we've got Arsenal on Wednesday. He obviously wants to rest players like Son, Kulusevski. So we've got Arsenal. I think the manager's well within his rights to think that anyone in our team, probably even our under 18s could turn up and do a job at Tamworth. But he was obviously wrong, and I don't really blame him for that. Do you think any blame can be apportioned his way at all?
I mean, look, there's always an element of if a football team doesn't play well, the manager's accountable for something. I think in this circumstances where the talent on the pitch is so drastic, you'd expect, even if Ange wasn't there and the players were left to their own devices, they should be able to go there and win convincingly just based on talent alone. And you're right, like Johnson's an international, and he's played, Premier League for the last two or three seasons. He scored whatever, like 10 goals or something this season. We've got Werner's won a Champions League. Whether you think he's rubbish or not, he still played his entire career in the top flight. Again, he's played for Germany. Mikey Moore, who's the one who's you would say is the youth player, no one had a problem with his performance. I mean, he was a bit rusty, you could tell, but there were no issues there. So you're talking about two players who should be miles better than the opposition they're playing against. And if you've ever played like even a Sunday league game, and someone brings a ringer in who's played semi-pro, right, which is a smaller gap from Sunday league to semi-pro. Semi-pros are unbelievable in comparison to Sunday league players. Like you almost get to the point where your brain can't process how good Premier League players are, because you're like, how can they be that much better, right? So a Werner versus a bloke who's, their second job is to play football. It shouldn't be anything to do with Ange, right? It should be more than comfortable to play in there. But personally, I think this whole game, the performance itself was down, I think personally, down to application. I just think the players were taking it like easy, and they thought it's just a matter of time. We're just better than them man for man. And actually, yes, there is a huge gap, but fundamentally, if you put a lot of players behind the ball and you work hard and you're organised and the other team aren't really playing that well, it's still hard to score goals, right? It's still people in your way, and it's still more tricky. Especially, and this is my kind of broader point that I've been banging the drum for a while, if the players you have got aren't like technical players, aren't like creative, find passes, see balls, beat players, and they're much more like running, and that's why they're elite, because they've got incredible stamina, incredible pace. That is quite limiting, even against sides that have a massive deficiency in terms of their technical standard. And so just to qualify this, right, all professionals who play in the Premier League are ridiculously good technically. But compared to each other, there are players who are much more technical and much more more of a physicality is their main aspect. And I think we've got, and this week was a great glimpse into this issue. We've got an issue when we play against teams who want to sit in and low block, no matter their standard, because the reason that we could perform well against Liverpool is because they didn't do that, right? So players like Johnson and Werner and some of our other players can maximise their best attributes because there's space to run in behind. Whenever we've played against a team who doesn't want to do that, Ipswich or Tamworth or anyone in between who wants to sit in, we've really struggled, because you need different types of players who can do different types of things, and you need more technical players. And if you just look at that squad yesterday and you just look at who performed well just in that game. Now, granted, again, I don't want to qualify this too much, but we know that they should be better regardless of what I'm about to say, right? There's just clearly a gap there. But Spurs' best performers in that game, Maddison, pretty technically gifted player. Archie Gray is a pretty technically gifted player. Spence, when he came on, technically gifted player. Bergvall, technically gifted player. Players who struggled, like Johnson, what is he? He's a runner. He's a really fast, aggressive runner. Werner is a runner. He's not technically gifted. Even Sarr, who I absolutely love as a footballer, and he's getting better technically, but he's more, on a scale, he's more of a physicality type player than technical player. Struggled yesterday in comparison to Basuma, who's much more technical, right? So all of our technical players look levels above the Tamworth players. The runners look the same standard because it's a leveler, right? Because that's the main difference between non-league football and elite football, is the technical ability is so high. And I just feel like that is a broader issue, which is why we do really well against all the teams we're not supposed to do well against. All the best teams, we can pick up results. And we look really bad against teams we're supposed to beat, who actually just defend better and sit deeper. And that, without oversimplifying it, I do think that's like broader view is a bit of an issue, sort of regardless of Ange, because we've seen this for years with our squads where there's been this lack of technically gifted players, and it costs us against low blocks. And I think we're seeing exactly the same thing now. And whilst none of that should matter against Tamworth, I do think it was a really good example of exactly the issues that we've got, that a team that low still causes a problem because of that issue.
I think that's a really interesting take on it, mate. And yeah, it's something I definitely believe to be true. I think because I don't think we need to waste our breath talking about Timo Werner. Like, we all know exactly what he is. We know there's probably a player in there somewhere. I mean, we know there is. We've seen old Leipzig highlights and stuff, but he's just so mentally lost, it would seem. And I always sort of err on the side of caution talking about like players and their mentality and where they're at, where their heads are at. But it's quite obvious to see a player who can be as drastically bad as he is and has been this season, and has been, in his last year at Chelsea and everything, has a catastrophic confidence crisis or whatever that he clearly just can't get himself out of now. I would quite happily never see him play for Tottenham again. Like, send him back now, even if it leaves us short. Give somebody from the academy a go. And I mean, I know people say that's knee jerk, but if he can't even rock up at Tamworth and put in a performance, he's pointless. Like, he's a pointless footballer for us. And I know he's a lovely fella. Like, you see him in interviews and all that. Lovely fella, lovely guy, very sweet, all that type of thing. Doesn't matter though. It does not matter for Tottenham, and I just can't be asked for him. I think the more awkward one, really, that I've sort of resisted going in too hard on, but I just think Brennan Johnson is kind of pointless as well. And I think there's more of a conversation to be had there, because it's a bit rich to call your club's second highest goals and assists, or I think goal contributor this season, pointless. But I just look at him, and I was sort of saying in the post-match that when I look at the way somebody like Kinski, that added element of having a player that can truly play out from the back, who is quite clearly masterful with his feet, how that's just unlocked a whole other level to Ange's game plan, to what we're trying to do. The idea that I've sort of had in the back of my head that it's not really crucial that we add somebody in that final third. I think we've got, maybe we need to get a number 6 first. Maybe we need to get somebody that can replace Bentancur first. Maybe we need to get more defensive cover first. There is something that bit me when I watch a game like yesterday, and I think, cool, Mikey Moore's coming through, but Mikey Moore's 17 years old still. Brennan Johnson and Timo Werner struggling away at Tamworth. Maybe we do actually need to drop a wedge in that position. And the fact we've been so linked with Kala Muani, now see Marcus Rashford today as well, would suggest that the club and Ange probably feel similar, right?
I think so, mate. I think modern football requires basically a squad stacked with attacking options. And I actually think, if I'm being super generous to Johnson, I actually think he's not pointless. He actually serves a really good purpose in specific games, or in specific moments in specific games. And I think his best games, his best moments are where the game is more stretched and there's more space and he can arrive at the back post. Where he's completely pointless is games like Tamworth or Ipswich at home, where they're going to sit in. He can't beat a man and he can't cross from deep. So it literally is pointless because he can't provide the things that are required of him for that game. And if you had an alternative player on that side, he wouldn't start. And we've actually seen that this season, where Kulusevski started in that position, because even Ange has recognised in certain games he can't offer what we want to offer. Now, I guess his thought process for Tamworth was where he's just so far ahead that even though it's not suited to him, he's still much better individual basis, right? So I understand that in this instance, but I think, again, more generally, it's a problem against certain types of opposition, and I think Ange knows that, which is one, why we're linked with these players, and two, why Kulusevski, even though he's been brilliant in the middle, has on occasion been asked to play out wide, because you need a slightly better or different profile to be able to play in that position against certain opposition. So I definitely think we need to look at that, and I think we need to look at that on both sides. I think both you and I have been very vocal on various different podcasts, on all sorts of social media, about how much we love Heung-min Son, and he is probably my favourite ever player, maybe slightly marginally above Kane, just from a that aspect of he signed an extension when Kane wanted to leave. That to me means a lot, and
Yeah,
I'll always
loyalty.
love him for that loyalty, like above all. And I really, I've really felt sorry for him this season, not performing. And let's be clear, he's not performed. He's not been good this season at all. But he's one of those players where I look at and I think, right, he's still got sort of, and it's a bit of a wanky term, he's still got brand recognition, right? People look at him and go, wow, Spurs have still got Son. He's like a top player. I think if he has another bad season next year and we haven't like planned for that, it's going to become increasingly more difficult for us to find a replacement at a price we can afford. Because right now, people are like, well, they've got Son, so like, they don't have to sign our player. They could stick with Son. Next year, if Son's not playing well and we go, we want your winger, they're going to be like, well, they need this guy. Like, they really, really need him now. So I think we actually need to sign a big player on both sides. And we really need to think about the profile of that type of player. Because I agree, like, Mikey Moore seems to be like a fantastic dribbler type player that really could be like a sensational player, but he's so young. You're talking about realistically 2 or 3 seasons before you see really that at the level we're going to need to kick on. But he should definitely be the rotation option. We've got Odebear, who nobody knows how good he's going to be either, so that's a bit of an unknown. Johnson, and like the depth just isn't really there in those wide positions. And in this modern era of football where you play, one striker down the middle and 2 wingers on either side, you kind of need at least 2 on either side, and they need to be different profiles. And then you probably need another one that can play on both sides, at least. So like we're quite far away from that, and certainly of a standard that really kicks us on. If you compare us to like the other clubs in the mix of the top 5 teams, which is where we want to be, like there's a lot of players in there are a lot better than our first choices. I mean, just look at, for example, the scum. Saka is just miles better than Johnson. Like, it's miles better than him.
Just
Cole Palmer.
Is it? Like...
Cole Palmer is miles better. Mo Salah is miles better. And I know it's just picking one position and then comparing, but like that's what you're up against. And like that's, I think, is the issue that we've really got to look at how we bridge that gap. So yeah, I think it's a big issue, and I do think we really need to think about this. And again, maybe this is outside of even this transfer window, right? It's more like the summer. So, going full circle about the sort of Ange view of things, whatever you feel about Ange, and I think there's plenty, like more than enough legitimate criticism of him. I think it's also fair to say that there's also work needs to be done with the squad, whoever the manager is, right, for these exact issues. So I think we should be wary of that when we talk about, these players, is that maybe Johnson isn't the answer for a starter, but maybe he could be in the squad if we had a better starter. And that's where it's harsh. If he was just coming on and scoring, 10 goals, you'd be like, great, what a great impact sub. But we're relying on him, and that's the issue.
What's your gut tell you where we're at, mate? Because it is funny, isn't it, to see us play, and people can say whatever they want. People say Liverpool were tired or blah, blah. We comprehensively, I feel, outplayed the best team in Europe that night. And I don't, they were rattled. They didn't see that coming. They hadn't prepared for that. It was winding them up, like I was talking about last week, seeing Trent kind of kicking off with a ball boy and stuff. It's little things like that that it seems silly, but it shows you, doesn't it? It shows you kind of that players are rattled. But then to have a game like Tamworth again, it just plays into this inconsistency that we've seen for most of this. I mean, to be fair, league-wise anyway, we've been consistently quite poor this season. But that Liverpool game, and I know it's knee-jerk to an extent, but that Liverpool game is the first game in quite some time where I've actually sort of sat back and taken stock and thought, maybe there is actually something quite good happening here again. For the first time probably since, the midpoint of last season. The early point of Ange his reign with us was fantastic, and then it sort of dipped a bit after we got a load of injuries, but then we started to kind of climb back a little bit and then ended the season quite poorly again. But still, I think there was enough there for me to think there is something good happening here, maybe. And maybe I'll just cool it a bit. But I still, that's not to say that I think like we're amazing either. I don't know. It's funny. Like I just can't get a grip on where we're at and how good or not we are, and how good or not so many of our players. Case in point, Pedro Porro. Is he a good player or not? I couldn't really tell you, because sometimes he has performances and I'm like, gutted Man City, let that one go. And then I'm also like, oh, I see why Man City let him go. You know, it's, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I think there's, like I said before, right? There's loads of criticism against Ange that I completely accept as being fair, and there surely isn't any Spurs fan. I mean, maybe there is a few that when we lose isn't annoyed, right? Like you should be annoyed, and you're entitled to be annoyed, and everything could be annoyed. You can also be annoyed in the moment, short term. We lost a game. I'm annoyed about that game, and also not want to call for the manager's head. And I guess like where I've come from, sort of since Ange joined the club, was less about him specifically, but more about what he represents. In other words, like I'm sort of a bit tired of like the short termism of this like win now manager stuff, and I was so burnt by Conte, who I really wanted to join the club, right? Because I wanted the club to show ambition. But the way he treated the club and the fans, I guess, with his sort of disdain, like I'm doing you guys a favour, and I just felt that he really like didn't represent the club in a good way. And I know a lot of people have spun that as like he was just telling us the truth about Levy and ENIC. Fine, like
the bollocks saying it.
and that's absolutely fine if that's what he's done, because we all, I think now most of people agree that there's issues there which I can't be asked to go into because I think everyone knows what they are, right? But outside of that, I just don't think he was a good statesman for the club. Now, fast forward to with Ange, those first 10 games were great on the pitch, and since then we've been stop-start and fairly terrible. But when we've been good, we've been exceptional, right? It's not just like we've picked up some results and then been terrible. We've either been absolutely incredible and smashed up some proper decent teams playing like electric football in a really exciting way, and we're all suddenly going, oh my God, Kulusevski's, is he the best player in the league? Oh my God, this guy's incredible, that guy's incredible, we're going to be brilliant, we're amazing. Then we have a terrible result and suddenly it's like, maybe you should go. So I think like we don't have to be, and again, I'm not telling people what to think, do what you want. But personally, I'm like, we don't have to be binary about this. We could see that the footballing issues within this season aren't great, right? But the general direction of travel is still positive. Now, you, again, might not feel that it is, in which case, fair enough. You'd come to the conclusion that maybe he's just not the guy. And I completely accept that. But for me, I'm looking at it and thinking, what do I want in a manager, right? I want, as a base level, I want someone who represents the club with pride and prestige. Yeah. Like the Poch gif of when he looks up, right? The last game at the Lane, when he's looking up and he's just looking around and soaking it all in. That was pride. He never let the club down. He never badmouthed the club publicly, right? He treated the club. He was like a statesman of the club. That's how I see Ange as well. I think he talks really well, communicates really well, and he's proud to be at the club, and he's proud to be the manager of a fantastic institution. I like that. I want a manager who wants to play attacking football. His philosophy is, I want to score loads of goals. That's their philosophy. The tactics, I don't care, right? Like your philosophy is what's important to me. You might decide that inverted fullbacks aren't the way and you want to play a different system. That's fine, but the philosophy has got to be attacking, and that's what Ange is. And then I want someone who will improve things and wants to ultimately win things, right? Now, Ange said from day one, yeah, I play this type of football, but I only play it because I think it's my best chance of winning stuff. And that's what matters to me. I want to win things. And so for me, it's like, look, he might not get there. He might not achieve those things. We might not play good football. And one day he might, call us all rats and he hates Spurs. But right now, he is trying to deliver on all of those points. And I look at like some of the mitigating circumstances, even if they were caused by him, like running players into the ground. Should he have rotated more? Yeah, absolutely. Should he have got Spence in the squad earlier? Yeah, absolutely. Should he have not taken Werner on loan? Yeah, he shouldn't have done that. That's happened, though. And yet I still feel like there's areas that we could adapt and change that will improve things, that when he has changed them, like Liverpool, like City, we are not playing the same. You cannot tell me we played the same against City and Liverpool as we did in previous games. There were adaptations made to the way that we played there. Now, I hope he learns from those and starts to like put those in place. Otherwise, what was the point? But assuming that he can is humble enough to go, right, I'm going to make these slight tweaks to the tactical side of what we're trying to do here. If you give him better players and more players, just add to the squad in the way that we have been, then you take away all the excuses, right? If he then is not achieving it, then fair enough. I'll take my chances with another manager. But I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and get rid of a guy who ticks so many boxes when we're going through a sticky patch. Because I see it as like, yeah, okay, these are issues, and there's no doubt about it. And people will go, oh, it's not a sticky patch. It's been going on for nearly a year and a half. Fine. But when I've sort of talked about this before, I've genuinely said to people, what do you think was the best we could have hoped for at the start of this season? Like, do you genuinely think we're a Champions League level squad? Forget Ange. Do you think this squad could finish in top four? Most people are like, well, no, because of this player, that player, the other player. You can't simultaneously think like we have, Johnson's not really good enough. He's a starting right winger. So, like, if he's not really good enough, and we're not sure if Maddison's really the best number 10 in the league, which, let's be honest, he isn't. We're not really sure we got a 6. Okay, great. We've got all these issues that we all point out all the time, but yet we expect him to somehow just win the league or be in the top 4. To me, there's got to be a level of like time. And if you give him the time, you give him the resources, and it doesn't work out, fine. At that point, you have to walk away. But I'm personally just not in that place, and I want him to be given more time to see how this plays out. And that's why things like shit performance against Tamworth or like terrible results against Ipswich at home wind me up in the moment. I'm fuming when the game ends, but I just shake it off because I'm really trying to look at the bigger picture of the way that we're going forward. And that's why I'm at the minute, I'm just kind of all right with the Anne situation. It doesn't really rattle me at all.
If we lost 7-0 at the Emirates, would you want him gone?
Yeah, immediately after the game, I'd be, Jack, can we pod? Because I need to take back everything I've just said. Yeah, I mean, look, I weirdly think you, and do I say this because it tempts? Oh, fuck that. I think we'll get a much better performance. We might not win, but I think we'll get a much better performance against Arsenal than we did against Tamworth.
I think we're going to win. I weirdly think we're going to win.
Yeah. Like, I wouldn't, and this is what I mean, right? Like, I wasn't that shocked when we beat Liverpool, and I wasn't that shocked that we played terrible and nearly went out to Tamworth, and I wouldn't be that shocked if we beat Arsenal. No. This is what I'm saying. So it's just like whether or not you're prepared to go. It's whether or not you think that those type of results are like Liverpool, Man City. If those type of results are the outlier, and that we can fix these problems against the shit teams and eventually become exceptional, or whether you think we are shit, but occasionally we can turn it on and be amazing. It depends which way you look at the world. I'm always like a glass half full kind of person. I'm looking at that thinking you can fix those problems, right? You can figure out how to, create chances against a low block, but not many teams can figure out how to smash up the best teams in the league. That's really difficult. So I'm looking at thinking he could fix these problems with the shit teams. And if we do that with better players and smart acquisitions, we could be doing good things. It just needs to play out and see what happens. But, like I said, I completely understand for all the reasons I've listed why people would come to a different conclusion. That's fair enough. I think it just boils down to like what your tolerance level is. And I don't give a shit about the league. Like, I've just written it off. I don't care anymore. I think we've been conditioned and programmed in modern football to be like Champions League qualification. That's the only thing that means success. No, it doesn't. Like, honestly, we've been in the Champions League. We got to a final. If we'd have won it, it would have been the best moment of my life. I would have probably stopped watching football and just retired going, yeah, like that was amazing. It didn't happen. We've been in the Champions League loads of times. Like, if we won the League Cup this year, it would feel better than qualifying for the Champions League. It would. So I'm just okay with the league. Like, I know it's shit, and I know it's an indicator, and I know you need to finish higher for all the reasons we stated. But if we finished 15th and won the League Cup, I'd be well happy with that. I wouldn't care because materially it makes no difference to us next season, except for we get a day out. That's what it's all about, winning trophies. So it'd be great.
Mate, let's talk about Djed Spence because we've both been, I think you more so, but we've both been banging the drum all season to see him included. I think there's a quote going around where he said, whilst he was playing at Genoa, that his time is going to come at some point, whether it's at Genoa or Tottenham, and he's going to explode. And I think we could comfortably say that he has exploded these past few games. He's grabbed the opportunity that's been presented to him with both hands and made the case that it's who out of Udogie and Porro plays alongside Djed Spence now. Yeah. I feel comfortable in saying that. He looks like one of our best players.
Yeah. I would go as far as, when Romero and Van der Ven get back, they're going to have to see if they're going to start ahead of him at centre-back as well. He I mean, he's exactly what I was talking about before as a good example of like technical players versus like runners and stuff, right? Like he's so technically so gifted, and it just gives him such a like big advantage, particularly in the way that we want to play, where the fullbacks are being asked to do a lot. They are asked to be doing a lot, and that does take it out of them physically, which is why maybe Porro's had a bit of a drop off. But also, I just think it gives us so much more when he's on the pitch because he can just receive it at any time, and even when he's under pressure, he's just more than happy to take the ball, and he usually just keeps hold of it. Like
Mate,
his ball
who
retention is
pockets Mo
amazing.
Salah? Who
I know,
pockets Mo Salah?
but that's the thing. He's like, for a technically gifted player, he's so good defensively. Like he's a really, really good defender. He's like basically people like Udogie because he's a really good one-on-one defender, but his sort of final third play leaves a little bit to be desired. And people rate Porro's attacking ability, but don't think he's a very good fullback. Spence is both. He's so good. Like, he's so good. Now, I was banging the drum for him, not because I knew he was this good, but because we had Royale and Doherty at the time. And I was like, look, I don't understand how those two can be playing, absolutely massacring the world of football, when this kid's on the bench, who, when we saw him play at Forest, and he had those odd occasions, the games that we all saw, we were like, there's clearly a player here. And I just couldn't understand why you wouldn't give a kid like that a go, because sometimes it happens like that, where players just come into a side at a young age and they just lock it down and then suddenly become a big player. And I always felt like he was that type of footballer that would just do well if you just gave him a chance. But now I genuinely think he's the best fullback. I genuinely think that, because I think he has got all those attributes, and he's just performed like really well, and nothing phases him. Like he looks like he's like, this is a piece of piss. Like I should have been playing it. And yeah, I think there's huge upside with. I'm so glad that we're now seeing him and he's this good. Like it's so exciting all of a sudden.
He's just so tenacious, isn't he? That's
Yeah,
kind of what I love. Because, like you say, he's technically sound, but physically speaking, like he's massive. Like,
yeah.
and he's so rangy. He's so rangy and hard to knock off the ball. His close control's good. He's got quick feet. He's pretty press resistant, I would say. Like when we were watching him against Liverpool, like you were saying, nobody was getting the ball off him.
No.
And he just, it takes a certain mentality to know that you've got a lot on the line, to know that you've got this one chance. You've got this chance to make an impression, because Tottenham probably only gave you a contract extension because they want to get more money out of selling you. You haven't really pulled up trees other places you've gone on loan. So even somewhere like Genoa, they've not. Yeah, they had like a 10 mil something, whatever, change type offer, locked in to buy him at the end of the loan deal, and they didn't want to. So partly in his head, he's probably thinking, "Oh mate, I'm going to end up back in the Championship or something here, and I can't be bothered for that." He's taken this opportunity, and now he's making basically everybody look like mugs, probably making himself look like, as people are quick to point out, probably making himself look like a mug as well, for whatever lack of application that there's apparently been to see him get to here. And, I don't, the thing is, do I want to go? Yeah, why not? I don't want to like white knight this stuff too much, but I can't help but think there's probably something in, like, if you know what I mean, like a young sort of black lad who has something of an attitude, if you like, the way in which he's treated by, say, certain managers or people that we've had working behind the scenes, that there may be a different lens that is put on him, and there's a perception of quite how bad his behavior or attitude or temperament is versus, say, other players. And maybe I'm just projecting that, and maybe that's something, but I don't know. You don't often, I don't know. It always just follows him around, this idea that he's got such a bad attitude. He's a bit of a bad egg, but you never really hear anything concrete about it. You never really hear anything. This actual incident happened where he told ex-manager to suck his mum or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, you never actually hear anything that he's done. There just seems to be this whiff of, like, he's got a bad attitude that follows him around. That I sort of think, like, when you see him rocking up into Tamworth and he's got his shades, he's got a beanie on, and he doesn't sort of give a fuck, you're like, I get it. I get why that sort of persona rubs certain people up the wrong way. But is he actually doing anything wrong? Because all I see is like when he's on the pitch for Tottenham is a really hard worker and quality footballer. So I don't know. That's sort of taking a bit of a tangent there, but
Yeah, and look, there's also an aspect of. So I totally agree with you, right? There's definitely like across the footballing world, especially in this country, there's got to be a level of like inherent subconscious biases there about attitude versus different groups of people and all that kind of stuff, right? So I won't dwell on that point. There's definitely got to be an aspect to that, and maybe that has factored in. Maybe he did have a bad attitude, and he needed to go through that phase of growing up. And some people, he's not like super young, but he's young enough where you need to. He's had if you think about from a young footballer's life, right? You have everything. Everyone tells you how amazing you are. You then get into the Premier League via the playoffs with a manager saying you got a bad attitude. You do that against all odds. Then you sign for like an incredible football club. Suddenly you're like, yeah, I've made it, and you think, well, foot's off the gas a little bit. The manager doesn't pick you, calls you a club sign, and you're like, oh, fuck this guy. So you can't be bothered to train, 100%, because you're like, what's the point? It doesn't rate me anyway, right? Then all of a sudden, like you said, you find yourself out on loan at Genoa, and that's maybe what he needed. Like maybe the talent was always there, but maybe he needed to struggle in order to come out the other side. And it's not that uncommon, right? There are lots of players who have like a sliding doors moment where it's like you either get over this, figure it out, and push forward, or they just disappear into obscurity and they never quite make it. I mean, like Ndombele, case in point, right? No one has ever argued his talent. No one's ever really questioned his like attitude in terms of being a bad guy. It was just application. Like he wasn't prepared to do what it took to get the most out of his talent. And I just think like maybe we're now seeing the benefit of what was probably quite a difficult time for him. And I mean, look, from in terms of things we can see, when Ange was getting pelters, I can't remember which, it was an away game, or maybe it was Bournemouth or somewhere.
What, when
Yeah.
people call him a fat cunt and everything?
Yeah. And there was one player who went over and was like, come on, Gaffer, like this. It was Spence.
Yeah.
And then the next game he didn't play. And did he sulk? No, he came in a couple of games later and played fantastic. So whatever, if it was there, I think it's now fair to say he's matured and he's over that. And that's only good for us because he's been sensational. And yeah, I'm really glad because, it's nice to see like young, bit of a cliche, young English players playing for your club. Like there's a sort of natural attachment there, even though he's not through our academy. Like when we had like Rose and Walker, even though again they were like northern lads, it's like they're English and they're like there's that passion, that fight that we're like, we're known for. I quite like that. I quite like having a few like English lads in the squad. It's the sort of Brexit Bass coming out now. But I love it. I do love it.
I wonder if that moment is like I'm sure well I won't project. I say there's a moment I've had down the years sometimes when you can get into like you can have good habits and you can hit the gym regularly, make sure you're eating all right and everything like that. But sometimes there's the flip side of that, and you think, it's all right. It's Tuesday. I can have a few beers. I can have a pizza. That's okay. I can let myself off the hook. And the next day it's this, and then the day after that it's that, and then 2 weeks down the line, you suddenly you're going to go out again, and you reach into the cupboard to pick out like that shirt that you like. And it's like, the buttons are a bit distressed on that one now.
Snug.
What's happened? And you sort of, I don't know, sometimes I have that moment when I like look at myself in the mirror and I think, the state of you, like, what have you done? Like, what are you doing? And I wonder if Djed Spence's moment was, did you see when Genoa signed him? And their like unveiling of him was they had, at the club, they had like so obviously someone's just nipped down like, whatever the Italian equivalent of Wilco is, get an easel, get like and so they had like this artist's easel type thing, and rested on it was just like this piece of like card with this awful like Photoshop job of like his face doing like a fist pump saying "Welcome, Djed," and I just thought, I wonder if he looked at this and thought, what the fuck has happened? Like, that's his distressed shirt. Like, just that moment of like, what the fuck has happened to me? Like, what? This is not going to be my career. It's not going to be this point. All the better for it. It's all Tottenham's luck, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Suddenly, it's like it goes from, we need a rotation option, we need a backup for Porro and a doggy, to now suddenly going, well, they could become the backup to Spence. And suddenly we've got this incredible player. And I think it's gone from, okay, maybe we've got a really good backup to, maybe he he could play instead of one of them to now like, no, he has to be the one. And then we've got to figure out how we get a rotation. Because I'm suddenly like, the best back four has him in it for me, either side. But he has to be in that team because I think like he gives that level, like I said, that if you've got Romero is definitely a technical player, Van der Ven, Udogie and Porro are all runners. So like if you want to put one more technical player in, Spence's got to play. So I'm now getting to the point where it's like, yeah, let's do this. Let's get him in the mix.
Just have a quick look on your WhatsApp, mate. I found you the unveiling image.
Superb.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's proper shit, isn't it? I hope that he basically printed it off and put it on his like mirror every morning. So when he looks at it and goes, never again. You know, like like with that shirt, you know, that doesn't quite fit. You just hang it up, leave it out. So every day when you're like, oh, I don't want to go for a run today, just look at the shirt and you go, never again.
Yeah.
Like,
you can even see his face in this image. He's like, oh, mate.
He's like, yeah. I mean, at least they got him. At least they got it right. I mean, I was half expecting it to be Louis Spence on there, and they just Googled Spence and then found that guy, the old dancer guy from Pineapple Studios, with his face on there. At least they got his face right. I
forgot about Louis Spence. That was a moment. There's a reference for the Gen Zs in the building. Let's move on. Like Djed Spence, great. Let's start him on Wednesday. And what's happening on Wednesday? Nobody needs to be told what's happening on Wednesday. Can I just say first, talk about Brexit Bass coming out, mate. A North London derby on a Wednesday evening.
Disgusting.
That is games gone territory, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. That's outrageous.
They don't want the boys on the beers all day. That's it. That's what they're doing. Is they're taking the game away from us, mate. You know what I mean?
But it's annoying for everyone because I feel like most, not that I give a shit, but most neutrals, this is one of their favourite games of the season. Yeah. Wednesday night, it's just moody. It's not even a Monday night football, which you could go, okay, fair enough. That's sort of a traditional like big thing that could be quite fun. But it's got to be the weekend. It's got to be that because otherwise it just diminishes this fixture massively, which is shit. And as much as I've said about I don't care about the league, the caveat and massive brackets is this fucking fixture.
Come on, of course. But this is, you know, for both teams, this is a cup final. It is. Of course. You know, it is. Like, and they can say that to mug us off, but they know it is as well. Like,
yeah, for sure. Especially now, right? They're not in. They're quietly having a bit of a stinky time of it at the moment. All is not well on the shit ship scumbag because there's all sorts going on there. Like, the fans are not super happy like they were even 6 months ago. Saka's fucking broken his leg or whatever he's done. He's out for ages. They're not playing particularly well. This whole... God, like, honestly, they are honestly the worst. Like, the white kit they wore the other night and them going, well, it's for knife crime. Like, no one knows what it's for. You're just wearing a white kit. And if you have to explain it, it's not done a good job, has it? So stop wearing our kit, you absolute freaks. That's point one. Point two... Every time you would speak to a like Gooner, if you ever had the Misfortune, they would tell you they don't mind playing this absolutely awful like Stoke West Brom football because it's effective and it's working and we don't care as long as we get points. But now they're just in a state where actually they're not even happy with that anymore and they're not enjoying it. And when they don't get results, it's absolutely horrific, which reminded me of Conte, right? Like, it was great when we were winning, but as soon as you're not winning, it's the worst place to be in football is a horrible footballing style. You got Arteta talking about every different game they play in every different competition. Well, the ball's different. Is it? Is it different? Wow.
Like, genuinely grow up. The thing, do you know what I would say? Is because people are naturally going to do this, right? There's been so many comparisons made to like them and the Pochettino era with Arteta and now comparisons inversely to our roadmap under Ange and how that tallies up with what Arteta was doing and all those types of things. I would say is if we're going to carry on with these type of comparisons, there's a hint here for me of the sort of, should we say, 2017, 2018 Pochettino with what's happening now where we've just had that 16-17 season where we've been absolutely phenomenal. And then 17-18 where it's like, you're good, but
Mm.
you're not quite as good as you were like the year before. And then obviously on to 18, 19 after that, when it was like, you're still all right, but actually league form's gone out the window and everything like that. But I would say, like, with this Arsenal team now, I'm just suddenly like, I'm not going to write you off. Like, you're probably still going to finish second or third. You're still one of the best teams in the country.
Yeah.
There's still always a threat that if Liverpool have a wobble or something like that, you can capitalise on that. You can't ever sort of write them off on that. But the past 2 years, I've been sat there like, they're going to win it. Like, they're City. I don't trust City. That hunger is surely going to go after they've won the treble. Like, I don't know if City are going to be able to maintain this. And like, do you know what I mean? Arsenal came close last year. They came close. It was they were a Son Heung-min goal away from winning the league, ironically enough. And I just don't feel that way this year. Like, I don't. Look, we might turn up there. We might turn up there on Wednesday. And as they tend to do, one thing you have to give them is they take this game seriously all the time. They take this game more seriously than half our fucking shitbags down the years have done, which is something that frustrates me more than them actually beating. Like, them beating us is disgusting. It's horrible. But the thing that adds to that, the thing that adds to the misery of it, is how often we've seen in this fixture, when we've maybe even had a better team than them or been in better form or in a better position than them, to see how much more hungry their players seem to be for it, to see like so many even ex-players, the way they come out the woodwork, and it's your Chesneys. Do you know what I mean? Players like that, how they love to like still rub it in. North London is red and all that type of thing. Like, it really means something to them. And I think like Pochettino really tapped into that. Pochettino really managed to galvanise the team for the most part around this fixture. And really and I guess it helped that we had a core of players like Harry Kane, who obviously understood the significance of the fixture. And it helps that we've got somebody like Sonny, who has played his fair share of North London derbies now and knows what it's like. It'll be interesting to see if Mikey Moore plays in this one. I don't know if he will or not, but I doubt it will be lost on him. I doubt it will be lost on somebody like Djed Spence, like you say. He's given us a horrible time before when he's played at Nottingham Forest. Such a horrible time that I think they tried to sign him as well out the back of it, but it didn't happen for whatever various reasons. But sort of to the point of like, the past few years I've been sat here, and I will say honestly, I've been sat here thinking, nah, we're going to go to the Emirates and they're hitting us 5-6 and we're just going to have to take our medicine on this. This is disgusting. I've kind of felt for like a few weeks now, we don't have any right to. Our league form isn't great, but for all the reasons that we've been talking about at the top end of this podcast, I kind of feel like we can. I mean, I do, like, as you were saying at the Tamworth game, I do feel that Wednesday night can go the way of us losing 5-1 or something like that. I think that is still a distinct possibility, and I'm not getting ahead of myself with this. But equally, can I see us rocking up there and quite freakishly winning like 3-1 or something like that? I can see Tottenham doing that. And as I will continue to say, for all of the bad stuff I say about Ange Postecoglou, I would say that he has created the capacity to believe, again, that those type of results are possible. Just by, whether you like him or not, just by sheer virtue of the way he approaches games, by sheer virtue of the sort of mantra he has and will probably be breeding into these players, you can see Tottenham doing this. You can, unlike when we had a manager like Antonio Conte, who was going to say, let's go to the Emirates and try and get a draw out of this. And you know he's not going to be saying that. You know he is going to be saying, this game is massive. This game means everything to these fans. It should mean everything to you. All of you have grown up with a team with a favourite. You all know what a derby is, right? Go out there and rip these lots' heads off. Like, you've done it. You've done it at the Etihad. You've done it at Old Trafford. Go and do it at the Emirates now. Go and do it there. Ram it down their faces. Stop them winning the league and do it for the fans. Restore some pride in it. And I just think we can do it. I do. You know?
Yeah, I'm exactly the same as you. I think One of the things that definitely I thought about in sort of the last couple of days, even before the Tamworth game, was on my mind, obviously, about the Scum game. And I was thinking, you mentioned it there about Sonny clearly missing on purpose to stop, Arsenal winning the league, which I firmly believe in that split second he was like, I'm just going to fuck this up. Like, I genuinely think he meant to not score, which again makes me love him even more. And you remember that Ange just couldn't get it. He couldn't understand why we didn't want to win an individual game. And he got absolutely, I think rightly, he got absolutely slaughtered. For a guy who understands football culture so well, to not understand why we wouldn't want our rivals to win the league effectively in our stadium as a result of us getting a certain type of result. I think he said since that he didn't understand it, but does now understand it. And I think that lesson of like how much hatred we have for them and what that rivalry actually means to us. Now, bear in mind, he's been. I remember listening to you talking about it when he was talking about Old Firm games. And you're like, bearing in mind he's been a manager of an Old Firm club and done that derby, how he couldn't understand that rivalry is beyond me. That surely now has gone, right? Like, he understands it. And so I think you're right. I think there's got to be an element of he's going to go into that changing room with those players and really tap into the emotion of what this means. And plus, we like I said before, I think we do perform better when we play against these type of teams who there's an expectation that they have to come out and play a bit against us. Now, I know Arsenal are also just a bit cloggy at the moment, and they are also happy to sit in all the rest of it. I get that. But they aren't going to be allowed to do that at home against us. Like, they will have to come out and they will have to play a little bit. And also think by sort of the forced changes we've got in some ways helps us a little bit, right? Like, we've already seen with Kingski, he's much better at coming out and claiming like corners and throw-ins and stuff than Vicario. Might not prove to be a better goalkeeper around, but he's definitely better at that area. That's something that's a big strength for Arsenal. Our best defender at just fucking heading it and getting in the way is Dragusin, right? He's not a great player, but he's the best at just getting in the way, heading, defending, like old school defending. Well, he's got to play. So, like, immediately when they're lumping balls into the box, you've already got a better presence there. So, like, these little changes that have been forced that have cost us in other games start to help us in these kind of games. And yeah, I just feel like the Tamworth game was pretty terrible, but actually, we got enough of the game done without having to use Sonny, Kulusevski and Solanke too much. Like, they played a bit, right? They played more than we wanted them to. But it's not like it wasn't super taxing, whereas, Arsenal doing the same thing, extra time and then pens. There were a lot more players in that team that have gone a little bit further into that game. So I think on balance, like, things are in a positive place and we should go into that game believing that it's possible to get a result. And wouldn't it just be fucking brilliant to, again, who cares about the league, but to just win this is even funnier given that we've been absolute shit in the league. If this is the game we decide we're going to smash them up. Because, like, if you can just get this one done, then I genuinely don't care about the rest of the league season. I don't care about any other game. Just win this one and you can lose the rest. I don't care. Just try and win a cup and win this game and then everything's forgiven. So, yeah, let's just go and do it, please.
I think that the one thing I would say about this one as well is like you say, if you look at how bad our league form is, and you look at the fact they're still kind of almost desperately getting to the point now of clinging on to the idea that they can win the league this year.
Yeah.
There's so much more jeopardy in this one for them this time.
That's true, yeah.
There's so much more jeopardy in the idea as well of, like you say, coming out and playing against this Tottenham team. Because as poor as we have been at times, like you say, it's mainly we've been poor against teams that have sat back and sat in and played with two banks of four and not allowed us to break through. An Arsenal team that likes to control the flow of a match, likes to play things on the front foot, likes to be open and attacking from the off, right? I mean, for the most part, anyway, aside from when Arteta fancies playing his sort of Stoke City, Tony Pulis brand of football, that's going to be quite the conundrum for them. Can you, like you say, can you imagine sitting back at home in the North London derby against this Tottenham team? Like he simply in an optic sense, he can't do that, can he?
No,
Like,
no,
not
he
a
can't
chance.
go full West Woolwich Albion. He can't because he'll get absolutely savaged. And I think in a way it's like sort of better that they've had this bad result because now it's like extra pressure. To your point, right? It's like all eggs in there. We've got to win this. We've got to try and stay in this league title. And to be honest, I hadn't really thought about that. Like previously, it's been both teams trying to get into the Champions League or them trying to get to win the league and we're still trying to get in the Champions League. So there's jeopardy on both sides for different reasons. Now there's basically there's nothing for us because it's just another league defeat. And I think everyone, even people who hate Ange, is just like, well, it doesn't really make much difference to us. But if they lose this, they are really out of the title race. Like they are pretty much done. So it would be such a big nail in the coffin just to fucking rock up there, fucking Tottenham big bollocks Hotspur and just fucking smash them to bits, teabag them in their own house. It'd be fantastic.
Mikey Moore winner.
Mate.
Future at Tottenham. Imagine him darting in. You see what Xerxes did to Saliba the other night?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Mikey Moore doing that, knowing that you can get at Saliba, knocking it through his legs and just doing one of those shots where he cuts in from the wing and bends it. Oh, soaring past Raya. That's it. Tottenham in dreamland. We've won at the Emirates. Mikey Moore's a hero. A star is born. Good night, Arteta. Love it. You know what I mean?
That is the perfect like dream fulfillment, right? Because it's like you said, it's an academy player and all the rest of it. I would quite love like a bit of a Danny Rose moment, just like it's the 90 plus 5 of 94 minutes. So we're a minute over. The ball just drops to Archie Gray 40 yards out, and it's just Gray, and and you just get because it's we're attacking their end, so they're silent, and you just hear the ping off the back of the net, a bit like Wanyama's against Liverpool.
Yeah.
That. And then he's just like everyone's just lost it, and they're like going mental, and Arsenal players are kicking off, like just carnage. That's what I'd love that as well.
That Wanyama goal, mate. I still can't process that properly.
It's mental.
You know what I mean,
it's mental.
I either want that, or I want like like the goal that we went 1-0 up against Tamworth with. I want something disgusting like that. Dragusin just sort of falls over and the ball bounces off his back into the net, or off a corner or something like that. We win 1-0 in the 98th minute because of Dragusin falling over and the ball rebounding off of him. Yeah, I mean, something disgusting like that. Knowing that we've done that for them.
That would be good. I'd also like really, for sentimental reasons, I'd really love Heung-min Son just to put in an old school, just like out of nowhere, just cuts in, bangs one of the top bins.
Like
it would just be fantastic.
City in the Champions League, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
He scored one against them in COVID. Do you remember?
Yeah.
An absolute worldie.
It's so forgotten that goal as well.
I know.
It's literally one of the best goals we ever scored against Arsenal. That it's unbelievable.
COVID games were just They were just so pointless. Like they were so. That was the worst era of like football ever. It was so soulless and pointless and horrible. It was tragic. So there's so many good goals that just got completely forgotten about from that era. But yeah, I would love Sonny. I would love Sonny to score. I just feel like he's going for a really tough run, and it would just be fantastic, like just to score and just rub it in. It'd be so good. So any of those scenarios, Mikey Moore, Maisie, like Messi against fucking Malaga or whoever it was against, where he goes past like 5 players and then just puts it away. Archie Gray Thunder Bastard from 40 yards out, or a Heung-min Son classic. Any of those scenarios result in a winner, I'm going to fucking lose the plot.
Let's have them all. Let's have them
all. 3-0. All of those 3 goals.
3-0.
3-0, and they're all 90 plus.
3-0 away at the Emirates. North London is ours, echoing round the Emirates. Oh, fucking come on, Tottenham. Come on, Tottenham. I'm up for this now, John. I'm up for this. Yeah. Come on. Thank you very much, John, for joining me today, mate. Always a pleasure. Cheers.
Likewise. Thank you, mate. Always a pleasure.
Come on, you Spurs.
Peace.